Last week, I purchased a 2019 Framed Attack Pro for 40% off from a shop called The House Outdoor Gear located in St. Paul, Minnesota. If you're not mechanically inclined, I highly recommend paying the house or a local bike shop a setup fee to assemble your bike. The house will assemble and ship your bike for under $60. If you want to see how I did it, keep watching. The first thing on the agenda is to remove all the protective frame packaging and discard it all. Frame did a great job gift wrapping this bike to ensure nothing was damaged during the shipment. I didn't need the reflectors, so they went straight into the trash. I also like to use my bike maintenance stand for most of my builds because it allows me to work on my bike while it's standing up. I like to install my handlebar first because it makes it easier to move the bike around both on and off the stand. During this step, I snug tighten the handlebar stem bolts to prevent the handlebar from flopping around during setup. While removing the plastic packaging from the frame, the plastic axle protector was stuck to the axle nut. I fixed this problem by placing the broken plastic protector in a vise and squeezed the nut out. Next, I installed the front wheel. I'm used to mountain bike and road bike through axles, so this was a first for me to actually bolt an axle to a fork. Luckily, BMX wheels have axles and the tab washers help with aligning the wheel to the frame. I like to use a light coat of grease on the seat post to help with future removal. After installing the seat post, it was time to put the bike on the floor rack to finish up the front end. Unassembled box bikes do need a little bit of grease on the stem bolts. For demonstration purposes, I turn my handlebar sideways to show you how to work on your stem. I recommend that your stem and handlebar face forward and are aligned to your front tire. After greasing the stem bolts, I greased up the steerer tube bolt and gave it about a quarter turn of torque. Anything more would cause your steering to bind, and anything less would make your whole front end feel loose. Make sure you torque the steerer tube bolt first before you torque the stem bolts. With the handlebar facing forward and my steerer tube bolt torqued, I proceeded to torque my stem bolts in a quarter turn intervals until everything was tightened down. Next, I worked on the front stem bolts. I typically use an X pattern when torquing them down and continue to use quarter turn intervals. Make sure your top and bottom gap is even between the handlebar and the stem cap. Next, I installed the pedals. I actually installed the pedals while I was on the build stand, but it's way easier to do it while on the floor. I greased up the axles and installed them on my crank. Probably one of the most overlooked aspects of box bike assembly is greasing the crank bolts. I started with loosening the crank arm locking bolt and then removed the main crank bolt. After that, I greased them both up and reinstalled. These bolts require a lot of torque, so make sure you torque these bolts down really good. I recommend that you reverse install the bolts with the main bolt first and then the small locking bolt that sits on top of the crank arm. I noticed that my chain was too tight out of the box. I recommend that you loosen the rear axle and retension the chain. I was in the process of installing the rear peg anyways, so it was perfect time to set the chain tension. I adjusted my chain to about a ½ inch of vertical movement when placed on the tight side of the front chain ring. Afterwards, I adjusted my brake pads due to the new positioning of the rear wheel. That's it for my box build. In my next video, I shall entertain you with my fakie and bunny hop efforts. Let me know in the comments below if you're into freestyle BMX. If so, what tips do you have for me? Thanks for riding with me today, and I'll see you in my next video.